Okay, Watchman of Ephraim here this morning. I was going to do a video on John 3:13, Jesus being in heaven and on earth at the same time, but I was reading Deuteronomy 32 last night, the Song of Moses, which shows up again in Revelation 15, of which the saints are singing the Song of Moses as they're on the sea of glass, mingled with fire. Anyways, a certain sin popped out to me, and then another sin popped out, and I thought I would bring it up here. When I was concerning reading the Song of Moses and the identity of this nation, because these two sins, these two problems that are a result of God allowing us to touch the stove for 6,000 years, and if I may, let me click out of that. Concerning these two sins I saw in the Song of Moses, which finger the United States as Israel, Ephraim, the lead tribe of the lost tribes of Israel, the house of Israel. Once again, appearing again in the latter days, just like Judah over there, who goes by our name, Israel. Sorry, I'm a little slow this morning. I'm sipping my coffee. I know, my son, I know. He too shall be a people, and he too shall be great. Sliding down the line here, trying to find, forget it. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and he shall become a multitude of nations, or a fullness of nations. And that, in Genesis chapter 50, was going to be in the latter days. But hey, this is part of my ministry, to witness who this nation is and what's going to come upon it. And it's very strange that we are, if I may say, back in the Middle East, especially in Syria, of which that's how Ephraim got it the first time, with an alliance with Syria concerning Judah, wanting to overthrow Judah and set up a puppet government and a puppet king. Will the thing that has been be again? Well, one of the things that God, I had a manifestation of the Spirit years ago. I won't give you the 2016, in the fall of 2016. And the Spirit gave me an inspiration and told me that I must persevere. I must be patient. I must persevere. I must persevere for a long time. So, I'm testing this Spirit. Anyways, that which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. That's Old Faithful. It's probably the most important verse that could be the most important verse in the Bible. You want to establish repeated you want to see the repeated patterns. And what has been done is what, and what has happened in the past is now happening again to this nation. Only we have lost our identity. We think we are a Gentile nation. That was also prophesied. Anyways, before I get into this, because we now call evil good and good evil, and darkness for light and light for darkness, we have switched. And I'm freezing on the last, of course, verse 20, Isaiah 5, I do believe. Bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. I want to make sure I mention this. This is a faithful saying, 1 Timothy 1:15, 17. This is a faithful saying and worthy of all acceptance that Yehoshua came into the world, Messiah, came into the world to save sinners. That's why he came into the world, of whom I am chief. Well, you can put me in there. Drugs, alcohol, sex, food, overindulgence, the works of the flesh, adultery. Hey, you know what? There was a patient I had at work. She had a speech impediment, and she would say, she was Italian too. You're a bad boy. I was a bad boy when I was young. So much so, my mother deemed me an unmanageable child, and I even went to military school for 2 years. But for this reason I obtained mercy, that in me first Yeshua, Messiah, might show all long suffering as a pattern to those who are going to believe on him for aeonian life. And that's an illusion statement there. Because first you have the wheat harvest. I also read Matthew 13 in part of my readings last night. The wheat, the few, the priesthood. And after next comes the grape harvest. Now to the King, eternal, immortal, invisible, notice, to God, who alone is wise, be honor and glory forever and ever. Amen. If you want to translate it that way. What do they have in the little... the only God. How about that? Now to the King, eternal, immortal, invisible, to the only God, who alone is wise, and he gave that to his Son through the Spirit of wisdom, who only has immortality. I think that's 1 Timothy 6:16. Anyways, I was a rotten sinner. And we're going to look at a couple of sins that finger this country as Ephraim. Israel. That country, that little itty-bitty country over there in the Middle East has taken our name. But Israel, Jacob said, let my name be named on the two lads, Ephraim and Manasseh, Britain, United States. Manasseh, Britain, and her handful of Commonwealth nations like Canada, like New Zealand. United States became the multitude, the younger brother, the 13th tribe. Anyways, let me get into, let me go to Hosea first. Hosea 9. This will probably end up being an hour long. I had this little Go Bible that my wife bought me. I said, go out and get me a Go Bible, and Let me just stick to the script here. It was an NIV, and I was like, you know what? Couldn't you got another, So I'd drive around on my tractor, and I'd listen to this NIV Go Bible. And I'm grateful that, in the end, I'm grateful that she did. I think the Old Testament translations actually come from the Septuagint. Along the English translations. Don't quote me on that, though. But I want you to notice verse 7. The days of punishment are coming. The days of reckoning are at hand. Let Israel know this, because your sins are so many and your hostility so great. The prophet is considered a fool, and the inspired person a maniac. Because your sins are so many and so great. People that proclaim these sins, and one of them is really passed over as a sin, but I'm going to mention it. I did it too. I'll confess. The first one that comes up. Second one, nah. No, I didn't. But the good news is Messiah came into the world to save sinners. And he's going to save everyone, each in their own order. I have to throw in here verse 8. It popped out on me in the fall of 2016. I was driving around on my tractor. Nobody really knows who this guy was or is, if he exists in the latter days. It's an unnamed prophet. Just thought I'd throw in it. I'm in the area here. It says this is a good, well, you know what? I like this translation. The prophet along with my God is the watchman over Ephraim. This term in the Hebrew, watchman, it says he's a very diligent man that watches over Ephraim. He's very diligent at it. Yet snares await him in all his paths. I've read commentaries on this. Well, it's not Hosea. It's an unnamed guy. And hostility, snares await him in all his paths, and hostility in the house of his God. That word house can be translated family. Hostility, animosity, even hatred. Sounds like this guy was or is a very lonely man. He's not even accepted in the house or the family of his God. Now notice, they have sunk deep into corruption, as in the days of Gibeah. You know, when that, my memory's so terrible, but that concubine that was just abused continually. Her husband, a concubine, was just like a lesser status of a wife. He threw her out to these Benjamites. And he just abused her all night. She was dead in the morning, and he cut her up and sent her into all the tribes of Israel. Deep into corruption. Well, anyways, the first sin, it's kind of overlooked in the house of God. I've been guilty of it. I have to watch myself every day. Anyways, let's get into the Song of Moses. Deuteronomy. Let's see what these two sins that are very prominent today. That will finger. Let me get out of that. That will finger who this nation is. course, let the spirits be tested. We're back in Syria. Listen, you. Let me just go back to the. Let me go back to the New King James here. I should get out of the New King James altogether. Anyways, listen, you heavens, and I will speak. Hear, you earth, the words of my mouth. Let my teaching fall like rain. I'm not going to expound on the whole Song of Moses. That would take hours. And my words descend like dew, like showers on the new grass, like abundant rain on tender plants. He's trying to drive home here this, his what he's about to say here, expressing it strongly here. I will proclaim the name of Yahweh. Oh, praise the greatness of our God. He is the rock. His works are perfect, and all his ways are just, as I have proclaimed here on this little channel. There's going to be a restitution of all things, and it's buried in dark sayings, sacred secrets, hidden truths in the Torah, which is really an instruction manual given to the Son after the promises of Abraham, in short, circumcising humanity in 3 major phases. A faithful God who does no wrong, upright and just is he. Now notice, they are corrupt and not his children. You think we're corrupt? To their shame they are warped and a crooked generation. Is this generation? So he's kind of speaking of what? A generation that is, well, the last generation. What do you think? Do you think we fit the mold of Romans 1, which I'll get into? Is this the way you repay Yahweh, you foolish and unwise people? Do you think we're a foolish people today? Hosea chapter 7, I do believe, around verse 9 or 10. I could be off. Ephraim mixes himself with the nations, with the peoples, with foreigners. We're letting people just walk in here from all over the world on our southern border. Ephraim is a silly dove without any sense. Is he not your father, your creator, who made you and formed you? Because why? We'll read on. Remember the days of old. Consider the generations long past. Ask your father, and he will tell you. Your elders, and they will explain to you. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided all mankind, he set up the boundaries for the peoples according to the number of the sons of Israel. I think I'm still in the NIV here. There we go. You think we... Let me slide down here. There's got to be... right here. Do you think he divided the nations according to that little itty-bitty witty country that you can't even see on the map here? Right here, that little itty-bitty country, Israel. Or is there more to the story? Ephraim was prophesied to be, or Joseph was prophesied in Genesis 49 to be separate from his brothers. Separate from his brothers, sons of Joseph, right here in northwestern Europe. We're getting back. According to the number of the children of Israel, you think 5 million, 7 million people over there in the Middle East? Think all the nations were divided according to that little itty bitty country? Nah. They exist in the latter days. Read Genesis 49. This is what will befall you in the last days. Talking about Joseph being a fruitful vine that runs over the wall, a colonizing people. For Yahweh's portion is his people, Jacob is the place of his inheritance, beginning with the firstborn ones, the priesthood, which is a joke, which is nothing but lip service for most believers today. He found him in the desert land, in the wasteland, a howling wilderness. He encircled him, he instructed him. He kept him as the apple of his eye, as an eagle stirs up its nest, hovers over its young, going on, so forth, and so on and so forth. The blessings here, he made him ride in the heights of the earth, that he might eat the produce of the fields. Just type in here U.S. farm lands images. What do you think when you see our farmlands? Acres upon acres upon acres upon acres of the most fertile farmlands on earth. What do you think? When you think of the United States, look at all the wheat. I mean, think about it. Go back here. We have any pictures of cattle here? Nah, it doesn't look like it. Anyways, you get my point. Just look at all the wheat, the breadbasket of the world. Joseph, he fed the world with bread, right? The thing that has been is what will be. Click out of these things here. Cattle, I think we have raised more beef than any nation on earth, right? Cattle. What's the sign of Ephraim? The bull. He made him ride in the heights of the earth, that he might eat the produce of the fields. You go into a grocery store, go into Giant Eagle, look at all the food. Go into Walmart, look at the tons of food. You know, in Russia, when Gorbachev broke the Soviet Union, even before that, I forget the name of the prime minister or whatever, the president, whatever, before him or what, I can't remember. But when they were starting to loosen up, or it might have been just after him, he came over and he walked into a grocery store and he broke down weeping. Had nothing but barren shelves over in Russia, in the Soviet Union. Everybody brushed their teeth with vodka. Right? What was the blessing given to Jacob by Isaac? Dew of heaven, the fat of the earth. Plenty of wine, grain. He made him draw honey from the rock and oil from the flinty rock. You know, we produce more oil than Saudi Arabia now. We just passed them. Curds from the cattle and milk from the flock. Yeah, let's drive the point home. U.S. Beef, cattle. I wish I would have. I read it last night, and I should have proofread all of it in the morning. I should have proofread it again. All the different cattle in the U.S. here. Okay. All right. Right here's a bull here. Ephraim the bull. I mean, herds of cattle beyond our imagination. I can type in herds. I'm amazed every time I drive into the country or go on a trip with my wife. Overshot it. I mean, you can see all the pictures here. Herds of cattle. Overabundance leading up to a certain sin that's very, very prominent today. Let me go back. Curds from the cattle and milk from the flock, with the fat of lambs and rams of the breed of Bashan and goats. And the thing that has been is what will be. This is truly the land that flows with milk and honey. Abraham Lincoln recognized it. He said, "We have been the recipients of the choicest bounties of the earth." Thomas Jefferson said, "We are the true Israel, the land that flows with milk and honey. It's one of those days where I'm just getting ahead of myself in thoughts. And you drank wine, the blood of grapes. We're wine drinkers. Isaiah 28. Woe to the drunkards of Ephraim. Goes on about it. I forget exactly. They're drinking wine. They're drunk with wine. But Jeshurun, another word for Israel here, now notice, he grew fat and kicked. You grew fat, you grew thick. Notice, here's one of the identifying signs of our nation in the last days. You are obese. This might be offensive, but it's the truth. I myself, I'm 5'10", whatever, 5'9.5". I was, my normal weight should be 164 pounds. I've been as heavy as 230 pounds. Weighed myself this morning, 178. Officially, I'm still overweight. You're obese. You've grown thick. You're fat. The thing that has been, what? Is what will be. Ephraim was the lead tribe in the, and I'm going to go to, Ephraim was the most wealthy tribe. Read Hosea. During the time of Jeroboam. They had 2 houses. Many of them had 2 houses. They were filled with abundance. They had the problem of the super rich and the super poor, because the rich were oppressing the poor. They had abandoned they never really kept the Jubilee laws. Never. Look at the Hebrew here. You grew thick. This is tough stuff here. That's why I let off with me, a chief sinner. Abba, to be thick, fat, or gross. To be thick, fat, or gross. Going back. Now let's look at the word obese. You are obese. Kasa, to be sated or gorged with food. What do you think? And not just food, but a lot of crappy food. A lot of fast food that's cheap and very tasty. 42.4%. That's the age-adjusted prevalence of obesity among U.S. adults. We are the most obese developed nation on the earth. When I bought my first house, this is all the way back in 1989, with my wife, we had an immigrant from Germany, a young woman. I says, what was your first impression of the United States when you came over? And she went, she spoke in broken English. I never saw so many fat people in my life. That's what she said. Lousy imitation. The prevalence was 40% among younger adults aged 20 to 39, 44.8 among middle-aged adults aged 40 to 59, 42.8% among older adults aged 60 and over. 40.0% among younger adults. Adult obesity rates. Look at them by state. I don't even know what year. This is probably outdated. As high as 36% almost in West Virginia. 35.9% in the Deep South, Arizona. Look at all these numbers here. Colorado's low, probably because they do a lot of skiing. Low in Hawaii, 22%. But look at this. Very unpopular. What do you think? Guy eating junk food here. Pop. Man, I because I drank so heavy, when I was done, I had such a severe craving for sweets, I could drink buckets of pop. I can't remember the last time I had pop, though. I was able to rein it in. Through Christ, you can do all things. You just have to, you can't quit. You can't give up. I've developed this habit of having, I like potato chips, but ever since they came out with kettle chips, I've been eating chips for breakfast. On my way to work, I told my wife, this is it, I gotta quit. It's not good for you. Even though my weight's lower, it's not good. Do you not know that you are the temple of the living God? And God says that if you defile the temple of God, God will destroy you. Or God will allow you to he'll give you over to what your vice, what your indulgence is, and then he'll allow it to destroy you. My wife had to go into Walmart one time, and just for the heck of it, this is a few years ago, and I was watching people go in and out. It was late evening. Going in, I was counting the people. I just decided to count people going in. How many people were overweight? I think it was 2/3 the time I sat there. What do you think? Huh? Do you think that do you think we've become obese as a nation because of the abundance that God has given us? What do you think? Tough stuff here. This sin tends to get overlooked. Young kid obesity among it's getting out of hand. Even our young children. That's eating McDonald's. This is because this stuff is cheaper on the cheaper end. This is what we're gravitating towards more instead of more healthy foods. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. What do you think? By 2030, nearly half of Americans will have an obesity problem. What do you think? You are thick. You are obese. What do you think? You think God is talking about this country, Ephraim? and he shall become a multitude or a fullness of nations. What do you think? Offensive, huh? What do they call it? Fat shaming? I used to come up with excuses early in my days in the Worldwide Church of God. And you know what? And a very wise elder told me, he goes, we have another name for the things that you're calling, you're describing in the Church of God. We call it sin. And I'll be the first one, man, in line. Chief sinner, filled with addiction problems. I had, listen what I'm saying, I had an addictive personality, and I'm still suffering from the effects of that. Something happened to me, though, in February of 2016, which has not stopped. What do you think? You think that identifies us, the most obese nation out of all these developed nations in the world? Because of our abundance from the only God? He's trying to tell us a message here. And this song of Moses ends up in the saints' mouths in the last days. You think we're going to go across this country one day and warn people concerning their sins and what's going to come upon them? Now notice, then he forsook God who made him. What do empires do? And this problem, this sin, was prevalent, and was prevalent in every great empire. The Roman Empire had that problem. You ever hear that term, party like a Roman? They ate so much. This is prevalent among the rich mostly, the emperors and the rich. They would eat and eat and eat and then vomit their food up and eat some more. Then he forsook God who made him. Where does Paul get his doctrine in Romans 1? And 2, and scornfully esteemed the rock of his salvation, disdained him. What did we begin to do in the early 1960s? We began to remove what we did know of God. We've never forsaken the Baals and these mystery Babylon doctrines, but what knowledge of God we did have, that we were made in the image of God, we've thrown out. I've seen articles where this is part of the human evolutionary process, obesity. Then he forsook God and made him, who made him, and scornfully esteemed the rock of his salvation. So they give God up. They don't retain God in their knowledge any more. Then what does God do? Well, let's read on. They provoked him to jealousy with foreign gods. We've never left the Baals and the Ashtoreths. With abominations they provoked him to anger. They sacrificed to demons, not to God. The mainstream Christianity, hey man, I'm telling you, I'm the chief sinner, but I'm what they teach, like eternal torture and this Hebrew roots movement, they're just destroying the Torah. To gods they did not know, to new gods, what do they call that, syncretism? I'm very bad on theological terms. To new gods, new arrivals, that your fathers did not fear. Of the rock who begot you, you are unmindful. Right? Aren't we forgetting God again? And have forgotten the God who fathered you. Are we not retaining God in our knowledge anymore? And when Yahweh saw it, no, notice, when Yahweh saw it, he spurned them because of the provocation of his sons and his daughters. And he said, now notice, I will hide my face from them. When a nation or an empire becomes reprobate, what does God do? He gives them up. It's time for judgment. I will see what their end will be. Remember, the thing that has been is what will be, and that which is done is what will be done. Why are we over the eastern third of Syria? Why are we entangled again in the Middle East? Because that which has been is what will be. For they are a perverse generation. What does God do when a nation becomes reprobate? Children in whom is no faith. That's the only time I think in the Torah faith is mentioned. Let me click out of this. Let me just slide on down here because I think I got, you can see my pictures. I thought I reprobate, debasing, becoming debased, worthless, useless. Anyways, I'll get to that in a minute. They have provoked me to jealousy by what is not God. They have moved me to anger by their foolish idols. I'm just going to skip over that's the church there coming in the latter days of the priesthood. Yeah. I will heap disasters on them, verse 23. I will spend my arrows on them. You can see these prophecies in the first four seals. In Revelation chapter 6, they shall be wasted with hunger, devoured by pestilence and bitter destruction. I will also send against them the teeth of beasts. You notice like bears are coming back and all this wildlife is coming back. And not to mention the COVID and all that stuff, the pestilences and stuff like that, with the poison of serpents of the dust. Of the dust. Yeah, viruses and that, whatever. There shall be terror within, right? Terrorism. Your children being shot up in schools. Radical jihadists. For the young man and virgin, the nursing child with the man of gray hairs, I would have said, I will dash them in pieces. There's going to be no mercy when these judgments come upon us. Going on here, verse 28. For they are a nation void of counsel. I didn't look deeply into these Hebrew words, but I'm sure there's a lot behind it. We don't have any common sense anymore. That's when you become reprobate. You can't decipher from up from down and down from up. You're worthless. I almost reached that point if I wasn't there. What is it? Jeremiah 4:22. My people are stupid. They're wise to do evil. Nor is there any understanding in them. Just as we'll see in a moment. Oh, that they were wise, that they understood this, that they would consider their latter end. How could one chase 1,000 and put 10,000 to flight unless their rock had sold them? It's part of the blessings. And actually the curses too. And Yahweh had surrendered them. What? Well, he's going to give us up. Here's the second sin. For their vine is the vine of Sodom, and of the fields of Gomorrah. There's another sin here. Let me slide on down the line. What was a major sin of Sodom and Gomorrah that is prevalent today? Well, I put these down here. You know, it's in the Torah, and I forget. Forgive me, Deuteronomy in the 20s. My memory is very terrible. Don't tattoo your body. You know, what does man tend to do? He goes to extremes. I mean, look what we're becoming, man. Are we retaining God in our knowledge anymore? There are people that have turned themselves into devils. This guy, I put American extreme tattoos. Guy has the devil faces, gruesome. Devil faces all over his back. You think we've lost any common sense? Here's a woman who has a snake skin tattooed on one of her legs. What do you think? Hosea 4:9. You've forgotten the Torah of your God. Therefore, God's going to forget you. You know, I talk about the shadows and types, and then there's verses, instructions like this, not to tattoo yourself. And look, they're putting snakes on, you know. What is all this? Witchcraft, sorcery. You talk about disdain for the Holy One, giving up, knowledge that we were created in God's image. And here we go. What is a sin that we are like Sodom and Gomorrah? Well, here's transgenderism. A man, he's now a woman. You know, children now have the right to, if they want to be an animal, they can be an animal, and you have to recognize that. Like if somebody comes to school dressed like a dog, you have to recognize that. You have to respect it. You think we're at the end? Here's two gay men with their daughter. Do you think it's genetics? Or do you think it's, now they're coming out of the woodwork now. It's so prevalent. It's cultural now. Not saying you have a predisposition towards being more feminine in that, but now it's cultural. Now it's accepted. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. I was real uncomfortable pulling this stuff up because it gets tracked. Woe to those who call good evil and evil good. Who put darkness for light and light for darkness, put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. What do you think? Hey, here's a picture of two guys that are pregnant. You know, they're working on, science is working on ways to impregnate a man. What do you think? Do you think we've reached the point where we have reprobate minds and God is going to give us up? You know, God will only allow humanity to go so. He allows empires and nations to only go so far, and then he intervenes. As a father harshly disciplines a child. You know, the sex laws in the Torah are going to be reinstituted. There's not going to be any lesbianism or homosexuality. That's what I'm getting around to. The coming laws of the kingdom. You know, there's shadows and types in the Torah, like circumcision and feast days and food and sacrifices and leprosy, and then there's the moral aspect of it. You know, love is relative to what God declares as truth. Something I'll get into down the road. What do you think? Do you think we've reached the point of being reprobate? Two sins that finger this country. In 2015, it became the law of the land, gay marriage. And the last of those 4 blood red moons, tetrad blood red moons, appeared. I thought we were going to fall off the cliff and be judged right then. But they're just warnings of impending judgment. It was like the last spit in the face to God, and that last moon appeared. Of those 4 moons, 2014 2 moons, and 2015 on holy days to boot. What do you think? What do you think? Romans chapter 1. Starting in verse 18. It's very unfortunate, though, that believers tend to make a doctrine, one verse theology and one chapter theology. You got to read the whole of Romans. These people will be regenerated. Their time will come of repentance. They will cry out to God. And these sins can be turned around now, but you gotta, boy, I'll tell you. You ever read that poem, Don't Give Up? I had a depression that was beyond, like, my future wife tried to counsel me for 6 months. After 6 months, she said, I can't help you. I mean, it was beyond, like, it was, and I wrote that poem on a big piece of sheet of paper, and I had a bedroom, I had a studio apartment or whatever, and I put it up on the wall there, and I would read it every day, day after day, and then insomnia like you wouldn't believe for years. And in the Worldwide Church of God, we had those changes where half kept the law and half went into Orthodox mainstream Christianity. And a lot of people fell away. They just went back into the world. Well, I stuck it out. I somehow managed to stick it out, although I floated for like about 6 or 7 years. And I'm not saying I've attained anything, and I haven't. By faith, I have. I'm in the heavenlies with my head, with my husband. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. I believe that this is first and foremost to Nimrod and his father Cush, and those people that came through the flood who knew God, but they ended up turning against God. They knew about him, but they suppressed it, because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. Notice, for since the creation of the world his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power, he's the God of the eons, and Godhead or divinity, so that they are without excuse. Because, no, notice, because it seems to be in past tense here, because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and this happens over and over again, and their foolish hearts were darkened. They came out of the flood and they knew God, but they didn't glorify him. Professing to be wise, they became fools and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man and birds and four-footed animals and creeping things. Well, Nimrod quickly even made gods of themselves, like men. Birds and four-footed animals, Egypt, and creeping things. Therefore, now notice, where have we come to? Therefore, God also gave them up to uncleanness in the lusts of their hearts to dishonor their bodies among themselves, who exchanged the truth of God for the lie and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. If there was anybody like that, that was me. Drunk all the time. My favorite breakfast was cigarettes and booze at one time. For this reason, God gave them up to vile passions, for even the women exchanged the natural use of what is against nature. Well, what do you think? You think we're there? Likewise also the men. And you know, Judah over there and calls our name Israel, they have the highest percentage of this sin. Jacob's trouble, man. Likewise also, men leaving the natural use of the woman burned in their lust for one another, men with men committing what is shameful, and receiving in themselves the penalty of their error which was due. You know, they've done research that when you indulge in these type sins, that the chemistry of your brain will actually change. Notice, and even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge. Are we... I clicked out the people tattooed like snakes and that. Are we retaining God in our knowledge? Are we retaining the image? We were made in the image of God, or after the God kind. Being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit. Oh, by the way, concerning gluttony and that, read Proverbs 23. If you're given to much meat, put a knife to your throat. And further on down, I forget which verse is, don't be like the glutton or the drinker. I'm just paraphrasing. They'll come to poverty. And laziness. Sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder. We have the highest murder rate in the country, in the world. Strife, deceit, evil-mindedness. They are whisperers, backbiters, haters of God. Violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents. Well, how about it? You think we're there? Undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, unforgiving, unmerciful, who, knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death. Not only do those who do the same, but also approve of those who practice them. So you don't necessarily have to do it. If you partake, if you look on that stuff on TV and stuff, it's hard not to. It's just harder and harder every day. Every day I go in, this Every day I go in, I look at the news, I look at the world news, I look at what's going on in the Middle East, and you're always seeing suggestive stuff off to the side. And it's not a good place for me with my past. I've complained to God many times. I wanted to quit. I didn't want to do this in 2016. In the summer, I wanted to quit. Not only do the same, but also approve those who practice them. It's very unfortunate that many people stop right there and say they are deserving of death. We're all deserving of death. And in chapter 2, he gets into the condemnation of the Jew, the law keeper. Universal condemnation of humanity, if you want to wrap up those 2 chapters. That's why you need to become a new creation. That's why you need to put off the flesh. But there is hope for you, me, be in the Spirit. There's hope. There's just people that I knew a nice couple in the Worldwide Church of God. Very nice. I mean, one person's trial is another man's victory. It took me 2 days to quit smoking when I wanted to commit my life to Jesus and God and make Jesus my Lord and my King. It took me 2 days to quit smoking, but there was a guy I met in the church, and a nice wife, cute little couple. Guy couldn't quit smoking for his life. I mean, he's had trouble. You just can't quit. Hebrews 12 is a good one. Therefore, we need regeneration. We need the Spirit of God and the Spirit of Christ, and it's coming, each in their own order. Therefore, we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us. Now notice, these are trials. And let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Yeshua, Messiah Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, and actually the high priest that comes into the holiest of all and begins to cleanse. And some sins are just harder than others. Sexual sins are the worst. Take it from a guy that's had and still deals with a spirit that, I didn't start to reject till 2016. That's a story in itself. Then there's a reason for that, but it's got to be tested. And along the way, I incurred a lot of damage that could have been avoided, that could have been resolved. The joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls. As that poem I used to read, rest if you must, but don't you quit. I often think of a certain football game I saw. It was back in the 1980s. San Francisco 49ers against the Philadelphia Eagles at Philadelphia. Joe Montana was having a horrible game. He got sacked like 4 or 5 times, and they were down 27-7 going into the fourth quarter. He threw 3 touchdown passes in the fourth quarter, and they won 28-27. Like in the last minute or so. You can't give up. You have not yet resisted to bloodshed, striving against sin, and you have forgotten the exhortation which speaks to you as to sons. My son, do not despise the chastening of Yahweh, nor be discouraged when you are rebuked by him. For whom Yahweh loves, he chastens and scourges every son whom he receives. If you endure chastening, God deals with you as sons. You read the rest of the chapter yourself. But the fruit of the Spirit, remember, not your own effort. Of course, you got to submit, but you got to have faith. What do you think? You think those 2 sins finger us? Growing fat and obese, and I have to laugh at the Hebrew roots movement. I'm sorry, the Torah movement. They think they're in captivity. I've challenged people that live in this country. Do you really think you're in They think they're the lost sheep, and there's a captivity yet coming. They've put themselves under the Torah of the common people, or the people of the earth, or the common folk. They think they're actually in captivity. And they're waiting for God to bring them back to the land. Do you think this is captivity? Read Deuteronomy 28 and Leviticus 26. I've challenged them on that. They can't answer that. We're not in captivity. We're obese. We've grown fat because of the abundance that God has given us. And when that happens, God said, beware, when I have increased you in the land, I'm paraphrasing, and blessed you, beware lest you forget the name of Yahweh your God, and you turn aside to other gods. Well, that's what we've done again. I mean, those 2 sins are growing worse and worse. And he's going to give us up. And there's another captivity coming. There's another tribulation coming. But there is hope now and in the future for all of mankind. For the creation is eagerly waiting for the revealing of the sons of God, for the apokatastasis, for the restitution of all things, beginning on the Day of Atonement at the end of the 120th Jubilee cycle, when God will begin to make all things new and deliver the creation from this bondage of corruption, from the bondage of sin. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening.